welcome to another edition of the Get Growing Weekly Work Session with GetOiling. I'm Coach Ashley, joined today by Colin and Julie. Hey guys.
Hello.
How's it going, everyone?
We're excited to have you here today, where we're going to be talking about creating presentations and how to use them with GetOiling. So we're going to get into a lot of best practices. If you're somebody who teaches classes, if you want to create videos, maybe to sell things on your website, perhaps to onboard your customers, welcome them to Young Living, to create content, or even to use in one-on-one presentations. Lots of great ways to put this to use. There are fantastic ways to utilize pre-done stuff, which we'll get into as well. If you're looking for a cheat code and don't want to create a slide deck like we're talking about today, we'll get into that as well. But first, at the top here, I want to welcome you. This is a training that we host every Thursday at noon US Eastern Time, and is for anyone who is a Young Living brand partner. And it's an opportunity for you to learn and grow. And of course, if you aren't yet a member of the GetOiling community, it's a great way for you to get to know who we are and how we can help you. And if you are a member of our incredible community, you'll learn so much more about how you can take advantage of all the features in your GetOiling system. So I've got some slides prepared for you guys today. And of course, as always, we'll have plenty of space for Q&A. If you have questions as we're going through today's content, I want to encourage you to get into the Q&A here on Zoom. We do have two of the most capable people on the planet here to help you out as we're going through this. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. We're going to pop out a video. We're going to get into these slides. You guys go ahead and head into the chat. Let us know where you're coming in from. We are so excited to have you here today. All right, so today we are talking about creating presentations that convert. So this is something that you're going to be able to utilize, whether you are teaching classes in person or virtually, if you want to create videos for courses or for your customers and clients, and of course, so much more. We'll talk about use cases here as well. So let's get into this. Today, we're going to talk about our 5-step presentation checklist. We're going to go over 5 key things that you want to basically get together before you start presenting. We'll talk about how you can present and share with GetOiling. And then of course, as always, as we do here every Thursday, we have our live help and Q&A. So if you came here with questions, whether they have to do with today's topic or not, we welcome you to add those here to the Q&A in Zoom so that we can help you out. That's what these live calls are for. And if you're watching this as a replay, we welcome you to join us sometime in the future. We're on Zoom every week, and you can get the link if you go to getoiling.com/weekly work session. If you'd like to have one-on-one help on a call like this, if you have something perhaps a little bit more complex or you need a little bit more hand-holding, you can do that. You can go to getoiling.com/website review, and you can sign up for a space on a call just like this one. And if you'd like a hand getting things done, you can go to getoiling.com/concierge, and you can have someone take care of some of this stuff for you. All right, so let me know in the chat, do you offer classes? Or do you create videos? Or maybe you're looking to do one of these two things. So if you do offer classes, or you have an interest in creating video content, are you looking for a way to streamline how you share? This is not just a way for you to educate. This is also a phenomenal way for you to sell and to make sure that when you're selling, right? So when you're actually making a presentation that perhaps sells Young Living, that you're doing it in such a way that it's effective. How many of you have ever had the foot in mouth reaction where you feel like you might have overshared or overspoke when you were trying to share Young Living with someone? If you are someone who is prone to overshare or overspeak, slides like this are a godsend, right? Because this is going to help you to really stay on track. And I think importantly, as business owners, to systematize how you share. So that way you are talking about the same things, you're hitting the same points every time, and you can start to actually measure what's working for you and what's not, right? Making sure that you hit all of those correct notes. You don't let your anxiety get in the way, right? You have everything nicely prepared. So I highly recommend as a brand partner that you create something like this to use for yourself. And once you feel really good about it, it becomes an incredible duplicable thing. You can actually let your team use a presentation that works for you to share with their people, right? So in order to do any of this, we need some slides, we need a presentation. So you're actually looking at one here today. I'll talk a little bit about how I create slides like this and how you can create something perhaps a little bit more fancy if that is your vibe. So the presentation creation process, this is our 5-step process here, our checklist, if you will. First, objective. We have to establish our objective of our slide deck or of our presentation. We need to establish the audience for this presentation, the content of the presentation itself, the action we want people to take after consuming the content, and then finally, we need to get into the process of building, which has its own steps. We're going to get into all of these here. We've got a packed call, so be sure that you turn off your distractions, maybe grab your favorite way to take notes, because you're going to want to take some. All right, so first, let's get into this objective. The first thing that we have to do before we embark on creating slides is not to go find a cute template on Canva, but to figure out what the purpose of our presentation is. And whether or not that presentation purpose warrants the creation of such a tool, right? Because let's just say, for instance, I want to teach my customers about Ningxia Red. Is that an objective that is worthy of your time, right? Are there other great presentations out there that teach Ningxia Red? Does it need to come from you, right? But if your objective, let's just say, is to connect the idea of using Ningxia Red to the problem that is fatigue for moms in their 30s, that's a compelling reason to create your own slides, right? Because that's not content that, say, Young Living makes, right? Or maybe you want to talk similarly, you want to talk about how you can help busy, again, I'm going to use busy moms here because that really is the demographic of the majority of us, right? Who have Young Living as a focus. We're working with people who who care about others, who have people that they actively care for in a number of different ways. And then, of course, they want to be able to do a better job at that with the products they use. So maybe you want to help a busy mom who doesn't really have time to do all the research and label reading and maybe is on a budget and can't buy all the 27 different greenwashed products at the grocery store that she thinks are going to help her remove toxins from her home. Maybe you do create a busy mom's guide to cleaning the home with one product, and you do that presentation on thieves, right? There's your objective. So we want to be super clear. What is the thing that we want? Do we want to sell something? Do we want to educate on something? Do we want to let people know who we are and our expertise? So let's talk about these examples in a little bit more detail. So there are basically 3 objectives that your video might cover, and it's going to be one of these 3. It is never going to be more than one of these 3. So the first objective is branding and lead generation. So this is going to be, for instance, if you get invited to speak to someone's audience, but they prefer that you not pitch, right? So in this case, you might offer a free thing. So scan this QR code, go to this link and go get this PDF, this ebook, or something that I created for you, right? Or get onto my list, right? So public talks. Long form content. If you want to present on a topic on YouTube to get more followers, right? Build more traffic. Maybe this is something you also place onto your blog. This would be an objective for creating a presentation. You would, of course, in this case, film it, upload it to that platform, and have it be discoverable to the world. Sales is another important objective. This is going to be for those of you who have classes. If you have a Young Living focused class, your goal in that class is to introduce product and ultimately give people a call to action to buy it. So that is a sales objective. So this is going to be your live presentations. That's going to be online or in-person classes, and of course, recorded videos that you can include on your website and your member area, etc. And then finally, we have client or customer education, which is, onboarding videos, for instance. So if you have live or recorded sessions that you offer, you can have a slide deck so that you are going through those things, being succinct with what you're sharing, and of course, providing a more rich experience than just turning on a camera as a talking head, right? Course videos, if you are someone who is creating online courses, videos are not 100% necessary, but pretty close to 100%, something that you ought to have. This is a great thing to use for that. And then of course, if you have live program content, so if you're doing coaching calls, things like that, slides are going to be great for that. And so your objective here is going to be to educate, right? To inform and educate toward a result for people who have already purchased. Right? Okay, so we're clear. Our objective is either going to be, here's who I am, get on my list, buy something, or learn something because you've done one of the first two things, right? Okay, now let's talk about who your presentation is for and why it's important to them. So who it is and the context. So establish our audience. This again is going to fall into one of three categories. First is a general audience. That's going to be someone who comes to a talk at your local library. Maybe you're, giving a talk at your chiropractor's office, having a workshop there, or maybe you put a video out there that's on Facebook or, or on YouTube or something to that effect, right? It's a general audience. These are people who may follow you on social media, but they are not necessarily qualified leads on your list. We want them to be, but they are not yet. Now we have qualified leads. These are going to be people who have indicated some specific interest. So this is somebody who signed up for a class. Maybe they got a freebie off of your website, or they've otherwise expressed to you directly, I'm interested in what it is that you do. Can you tell me more? Right? And note that the reason why we need to establish our audience is because we're going to talk about what we want to do. We're going to achieve our objective a little differently based on who it is that we're speaking to, right? So for instance, we aren't going to go and give a full-blown pitch about Ningxia Red or thieves or something like that on our YouTube channel. Right? We don't want to do that. We want to actually get people onto our list so that we can build trust. So that the video that you might create, the slide deck presentation you create for your videos on YouTube, may be educating on a topic, but maybe then inviting them to come take advantage of your lead magnet, right? As opposed to pitching. But people who say, yes, I'm interested. And those are the people who are your leads in your system. Those are people that we would maybe put a sales video in front of or give a sales presentation to. And then finally, pretty straightforward. We've got our clients and our customers. For that audience, we are going to speak a little bit more candidly about product. We're maybe going to educate on product use, right? So we don't need to educate the general audience on YouTube about Young Living product use. We need to educate the general audience on YouTube about ways to address the problems that they are experiencing so that they can come to us to help them solve them ultimately with Young Living products, right? So we're going to talk to each of these different types of audiences differently. Now, this is a critical step. I think that a lot of us get spun around in circles when we are creating something that we maybe don't have a lot of experience with. That might be a website page, a website entirely, or a presentation like this. If you don't know what you want to say before you go and start using the software to create something, you are going to get in your own way really quickly, right? So we want to be really clear on what it is that we want to say, the points we want to make before we even go and start building stuff. So we want to outline our content. And that begins with a promise, right? So that's what they're going to get out of sticking around. You're going to offer this promise at the very beginning of your presentation, right? This sometimes looks like an agenda, such as what I do at the beginning of these calls, where I tell you, hey, if this is who you are, you're in the right place, and here's what you're going to get out of today's call, right? But you can also make a more compelling promise, which the example here would be maybe in the case where you're offering a high value lead magnet or perhaps a call with you at the close of a presentation. And of course, you will use that to qualify leads to be able to close them. You also need to consider engagement. Even if you're creating video, you want to make sure that what you are doing feels more like a conversation than you're at the podium and you're talking at people, right? This isn't a TED Talk. We are at a round table together. So what I want to encourage you to do as you are maybe making presenter notes for yourself, or you are writing out the slides themselves, really make sure that that you're asking questions throughout, right? Maybe tap into how that person might be feeling as a result of what they know and what they don't, or what it is that they're looking for, the problems they have, etc. And include those questions on your slides. You'll note I actually did that at the beginning of this one, right? Then, of course, you need to have your main points, what it is you're going to talk about in the order you plan to talk about it. And then you want to also make sure, and this can be kind of peppered in with the main points, you want to give context. Why is this point relevant to this person? So, for instance, if you are talking about fatigue and how moms in their 30s experience it, then you might talk about how this impacts her. So, right, you're maybe talking about um, cortisol being out of whack, right? Obviously, you might need to educate on that a little bit, right? Not a lot of people really know and understand what the cortisol cycle looks like. And if this is something you're going to talk about, you do need to explain it, but you also need to say this is important because, right? And you need to make sure that that's contextually relevant to the person that you're talking to. Obviously, we want to provide supporting information. If we're going to make a claim, it's really helpful to include quotes, statistics, case studies, testimonials, etc. This is really important, especially the colder your audience is, right? So the less authority you have with the audience that you're speaking to, the more critical it is that you include these things. They're important regardless, but there's a trust factor here, right? So make sure that you do include supporting information in the form of one or more of these options. Now, the last thing that we want to get into play here is our call to action. And this is really for the entirety of the presentation. We need to be clear after viewing this presentation, what do we want this person to do next, right? What are we going to tell them, direct them to do? So our call to action can be to maybe sign up for your lead magnet or subscribe to your channel. And the objective in this case would be for branding and lead generation, and it would be to a general audience. Again, this would be an example of you giving a talk in a public setting, maybe to someone else's audience, maybe you're at a chiropractor's office, or maybe you're also making a YouTube video, right? So you're making a presentation in one of those instances. Another might be take this step to purchase. And this is a sales objective with the audience being qualified leads, right? So in this case, at the close of your presentation, after you've made your points, you're going to tell them, if it's a recorded video, click the link below or click the button below to get started. Or you would have a slide that says, get started today and some other information. And maybe you're using that in a live setting, whether it be one-on-one or in a group. The final call to action option here would be to follow these steps to implement what you just learned or do this thing next. And what you would use this for is going to be any range of client or customer focused content. So if you're creating a video or you're going to be hosting some kind of a live call where you're going to be onboarding, maybe you're teaching something to your customers, or maybe you are creating a course. Anytime you deliver information in a presentation, you want to tell people what to do with it next, because they're not always necessarily going to be clear with that. And don't worry about feeling or sounding pushy, because you can't assume that people know what needs to happen next. They're sitting and listening to you because you have a higher level of knowledge and expertise than they do in whatever it is that you're talking about. So they have indicated that they trust you to show them what is. Now tell them what to do with it. All right. You cannot have a presentation without some kind of a call to action. All right. So we want to create an outline that includes all of this information before you create your slides. Okay, now you don't necessarily have to have every single word verbatim that you're going to put into all your slides, but you do at least need to have sort of a sequential order of what you're going to talk about and any of the additional information that you want to include, right? So organize your quotes and your case studies to go with your different points, etc. Be clear on what the call to action is, and so on. Now, when it's time to create our slide deck, we have a couple of options that we'll talk about here. We're going to talk about the software that we use, because it does require the use of software. We're going to talk about how to brand your presentation, how to use images with your presentations, and how to format your slides so that they work best on Zoom, whether that be live or for video recordings. All right, so let's do a quick little chat here about presentation software. There are many. This is coming from my expertise and perspective as somebody who creates multiple slide decks per week, not just many. I create many slide decks per week, and those might be for creating course content. It's definitely for creating presentations for our weekly live sessions such as these, as well as many other sales videos, etc. So this is coming from someone who does this often. And a lot of what I do is repeatable because I can essentially use what I've created once as a template for the next similar use case. So I'm going to share with you my best practices from that perspective. Yours may differ slightly, and we could certainly discuss those here on the call. So my recommendation for your presentation software is an actual presentation software. If you are a Windows or Mac user, PowerPoint is going to be great for you. If you are a Mac user, such as myself, I use Keynote. They work very similarly. I think one could make a pretty accurate argument that PowerPoint, having been around longer, is maybe a bit more robust and maybe a slightly better software. Microsoft does make better software in a lot of cases. But either of these, in my opinion, are pretty interchangeable, whichever one you are comfortable with or are willing to get comfortable with. And you will need to get comfortable with one of these. These are, and part of the reason why I recommend these, aside from the fact that they are built for the use case, is that they are easiest to present with Zoom. You don't have to figure out how to do things differently. There's no weird, wonky things that you have to do. You can simply press play on your Keynote and share, and I'll talk about what that looks like, and you can just go to town with it. Really easy. And of course, again, the use case for these softwares is presenting, and so they're obviously going to be the winners for the use case here, right? Canva, I want to note, because a lot of us do use Canva, and a lot of us do have maybe a high level of personal priority for the style, the visual style of how we're showing up. And Canva does make that easy and pretty, right? So you can get plug and play branding if you are using Canva, but it is challenging and sometimes not very great looking ultimately when it comes time to present. The most professional presenters and speakers I know and have experienced and have learned from over the course of a decade and a half, exactly 0 of them use Canva to present. They may utilize Canva graphics, images, etc., to build their slides, but they're ultimately putting their slides into PowerPoint or Keynote, just for whatever that's worth. All right, let's talk about branding your slide deck. So you want to make sure you're using your brand fonts throughout your slide deck. If you don't have your brand fonts downloaded to your computer or the device that you're using, you want to make sure that you do that. Just search for that font, download it. If you're on a desktop or laptop device, you could certainly Google how to add a font to a PC, how to add a font to a Mac. I know in Mac they have something called Fontbook. If you're using a mobile device and that's the only thing that you have access to, you can still build and create beautiful decks using tablets and phones. You're just going to want to learn how to make sure that you've got the correct fonts uploaded. For instance, when I travel, sometimes I choose to use an iPad as opposed to a laptop. And there are apps like iFont, I believe, where you can achieve something similar, right? Adding fonts to that device that you can use in software such as, in my case, Keynote. Now, once you have gotten the basics of your deck together, right? So you've opened your software, you're adding your fonts, right? Make sure that you are branding your slides with logos and optionally titles. So you can see throughout this deck, I have our GetOiling logo in the bottom right corner. And I also have the title of this content, which is the Get Growing Weekly Work Session. Now, you might not necessarily want or need to have the content title here, but since this is something that ultimately goes up on YouTube and we want to actively promote people knowing about the weekly work session so that they'll join and watch more of the videos that we have on that channel, I keep that branding here as well. You certainly don't have to. You could simply center your logo or have it somewhere as you wish. And if for course content, you don't necessarily need to do this in quite the same way, but I would argue that you ought to, just because if someone happens to see looking over the shoulder of a friend's content, you just want to make sure that your branding the work that you're doing so that you are highly recognizable and memorable to the people that are experiencing your work. Now, if you are utilizing color, as you can see here, I've got growing for the weekly work session, the kind of branding of this call. That is the same color as the color in our logo with the little oil drop, right? So make sure that you're doing something similar here. If you are going to use colors in your presentation, keep it consistent with your branding. One exception might be using a bright red if you're going to be maybe using an arrow or framing something, as you'll see here in a few slides where I talk about how to present. Something like that is very functional, but generally speaking, you want to make sure you're using your brand colors. Now, using images in your presentations, I highly recommend it if it's a sales presentation because they're a really great way to really invite your viewer or your attendee to engage emotionally in the content and for you to evoke that emotion using image. So this is particularly important if you are creating a sales, if your objective is a sales presentation, right? So the images that you might use, you can find lots of royalty-free images on Unsplash. Canva has these as well, and you can export images from Canva and plug them into your presentations. Just make sure that whatever you're doing, the images are big enough, right? The resolution size has to be big enough to fit your slides and expand into a widescreen, full screen situation. Otherwise, you're going to wind up with really poor quality for some or maybe even a lot of your viewers, and you don't want that. And then make sure as well, and this is more importantly for sales presentations, it's better to evoke the point that you're making with images as opposed to providing a literal depiction, right? So for instance, if we're talking about greenwashing, then you don't necessarily need to find an image that says greenwashing in it, right? Or if you're talking about mopping the floors, or cleaning the house, you certainly could have a single image that that kind of shows maybe it's a hand wiping something, but you could use that for lots of things. If you're making, maybe you're wanting to evoke frustration, you could use an image that shows maybe stormy weather as opposed to maybe a more generic goofy picture of a guy's face that looks really frustrated, right? And obviously this is kind of a fine-tuned point, but it is more effective for you if you are trying to elicit an emotional response to put something suggestive out there so as to invite someone to see themselves in that position, as opposed to giving them something literal, which kind of creates a separation, right? If it doesn't look like them, they don't see themselves. So you give something evocative so that they can kind of get in touch with what that image means to them. All right, formatting of your slides. This is really important, and this is what's going to save you tons of time. First, formatting. Before you build your slides out, make sure, and this is in the document settings for your slides, make sure that they are widescreen. And the resolution proportion here is 16:9, right? And that's actually what you're looking at here right now. This is the slides that we use every week. So it's 16:9. This means it's going to look really great on YouTube. It's going to look really great as a full screen. When people maybe want to go full screen and watch it on their different devices. And of course, it's going to look fantastic as a recorded video in your system. So set these up widescreen. That means there's not going to be any like black on the sides of it. It's just going to be the full, exactly what you want them to see. And then I want you to create a few template slides to save yourself some time. And basically what that means is you're just going to create these slides as a placeholder. You've got your branding established on them. You'll notice that as I go through this, the Get Growing Weekly Work Session and the GetOiling logo, they don't move around, right? Because I've literally made copies of the same slides over and over again to use for the different things that I need to do in these presentations. Right? So create template slides, and that is a title slide. And I'll show you what all of these look like in just a moment. So a title slide, a list slide, and an impact slide. These are the three that I recommend using. This is a title slide, right? Where we've got some bold text and maybe you have a subtitle here as well. We have a list slide, which is one where we can put our points in bullets and set up animations that allow us to have one bullet appear at a time. Just make sure in the case of using a list slide, be mindful of how much content that you put on a slide like this. Less is more. You can get really visually overwhelming with list slides, but create one like this so that you can use it in the future. And then this is an impact slide. Impact slides are useful to make a point because there's nothing else competing for its attention on the slide, right? So if you really need to drive an important point home, you want to use a slide like this, and impact slides work really well with image backgrounds like you see here. Just make sure that the text is legible. And what I've done in this case is I've created like an object to go back behind the text, and you can layer things in here just like you can layer things in Canva. And then take note as well where you have logos. So for instance, I couldn't read Get Growing Weekly Work Session down here on the bottom. So I changed that text from black to white so it shows up nicely on this image. So now let's talk about presenting your slides with GetOiling. So if you want to present live, what we're going to do is with PowerPoint or Keynote, we're going to open our presentation, and that's going to be in your PowerPoint or Keynote file. And then we're going to open Zoom. We're going to select share screen with Zoom, and oops, let's go back there. Share screen with Zoom. And then I want to make sure, do not go full screen. Select your presentation. Now, there are ways inside of both Keynote and PowerPoint to adjust what sharing your presentation looks like. So if you are someone who likes to have presenter notes and you want those to be visible, or maybe you want to be able to see both your screen and the chat and the Q&A and the participant list and so on, you want to not be full screen, right? Because you want to be able to present just in one screen. Now, you just want to make sure that you have set that up accordingly. With your PowerPoint or Keynote, there are some very great, simple, easy videos on how to present with presenter notes using PowerPoint or Keynote and Zoom. Just pop that into Google. There are a couple of great videos. I can do what I can to help you today if you guys have questions. But basically, you just want to make sure that you're not showing your whole screen. It's cleaner. It looks nicer. All right. And then once you have that ready, present. You're ready to go. Okay. Now, this is what this looks like. If you're in Zoom, you're going to click the share button. That's that little green one with the arrow. And you're going to present something that's on your screen. So the first option up top, which I think some of us do on default, is just to share the entire screen. But it's not what we want to do. We want to only show our slide deck. Okay. Then if you want to present your slides live using Canva, this is a little bit more complicated. Again, I don't really recommend Canva for live presenting. Create elements of your presentation in Canva and then move them over to an actual slide software is my recommendation here. But you would open your presentation in Canva in your browser in Zoom, and then you would select to present in Canva, and then you would share your screen with Zoom just like you did previously, except you're going to select the advanced option and then select a portion of your screen. Then you're actually going to drag and frame what that looks like with the provided box it gives you, and then you're able to present, and that looks like this. Again, clicking the green share button, there's an advanced tab up in the box, the top of Zoom, and then there's portion of screen. It's going to provide you with a little green box that you can drag over where your Canva presentation is so that it is only showing that part of your screen. You just have to be careful because if you wind up moving that browser window, for instance, or minimizing it or something, it's going to show whatever else is on your desktop. Again, just a little bit more complicated, not my personal favorite, but it is something that is doable. Now, if you're presenting in either case for video, make sure that once you're in your Zoom and you're sharing what you want to share on the screen, record to cloud, right? Whenever you're ready, record to cloud. And then when you're done, you can either stop the recording by clicking the stop recording button or just end your Zoom when you're done with the recording there. And of course, when the upload is done processing, you're going to be able to go into Zoom meetings and GetOiling, look for the My Recordings button, and you will see the link there up to that recorded meeting that you held. From there, there will be a link as well for you to click, and it will move that right over to the video manager. All right, so let's get into some live Q&A. I am curious to see if you guys have any questions or if there's any of this that you would like to kind of visually go over together. Happy to show and tell as much as possible. I do have Keynote, and that is what I'm using right now. And of course, so I don't have PowerPoint to share, but we could kind of look at some of this in Canva together. The limitation would be we are on Zoom right now, so there's like the actual functions of dragging the screen, etc. You're not really going to be able to see because we're on Zoom. So feel free, ask away. And I do think, let me see. And yeah, if you have a request as well to look at your site, we could certainly do that today here as well. Okay. When you use PowerPoint with Zoom, I need to share with extra steps like you shared with Canva. I use a Mac. So Dr. Brown, I am not super familiar with all of the specific steps of kind of setting up your preferences in PowerPoint to have those display. But I did watch a whole lot of videos about this like yesterday. And I believe that there are settings and they should be the same on a Mac. I think that it's in like when you're actually in the presentation settings, you can kind of choose what's visible and what's going to happen. And I think this is the same with Keynote, is it basically creates two different screens for you, right? There's the presentation screen, and that's the one that you'll select with Zoom. But then there's this other screen that's available that shows that slide. It shows your notes and it shows the upcoming slide. So I believe there is a way to do that with PowerPoint. Got you. Yeah, I mean, definitely like sharing a portion of your screen, like I said about when you use Canva for this, you could obviously certainly do that as well. You just have to be really mindful about whether or not anything moves on your screen or anything pops up on your screen, because that could cause some visual interruptions for you. But yeah, you guys feel free, pop your hand up if you have a question. You can come out and chat, or let us know if you have any questions. Gwen says, is there a time limit as far as how long recordings are in GetOiling? I don't think so. I mean, your meeting could go on for 24 hours, I think is the meeting time limit. So I mean, I can't imagine you needing a recording anywhere near that long, but yeah, and it does share, we do have audio only options as well as presenter view that show up there for you. So you do have the choice of those when you record to your system. The other option would be as well, for those of you who anticipate needing to edit your presentation, in that case, you would want to auto save, and this is a setting in GetOiling, auto save that presentation to your local device, right? So when you save it to your device, then you can, use whatever software you prefer to trim it and make any modifications you want to. Okay, Gwen, those are available. So when you save those recordings, your Zoom meeting recordings to GetOiling, and you have not converted them to your video library yet, those are available for about a week. It's like a week or 10 days or something like that. And then they would disappear. So what you want to do is go in and convert that to a video in your system, which there's just a link right there that says import to video library. And once it's in there, you're good to go. And then you can plug that video into a page on your website. You could put it into, a lesson in your online course. You could save the video directly. You could save the video directly and track whether or not somebody has watched it, right? Which is a cool new feature that we have here. Let me see. I want to maybe show you guys. Let me change my my presentation settings in Keynote here, and I'll actually show you how I have these things set up, because that might be helpful if you all are not as familiar with creating and using presentations. So here, I'm going to go over here and share just what this slide deck looks like, right? And just so you know, again, if you are creating slides for the purpose of a course, or if there is content where you're going to be showing up on a regular basis, I highly recommend that you just do a good job creating a sort of format once, and then you can repeat it every time you need to use it, right? And even elements of it. When I create an online course and I'm filming content for it, everything is over here on the side. You might see hundreds of these, but that basically means that once they're done, I'm able to present and record and record and record and record. And so I've got all those videos being created back to back. And that really allows you to churn out content as quickly as you'd like. and you're able to work in a really effective way because you're not switching context, right? You don't have to go fish for a a great image to use when you've already done all of that work. Now you just need to narrate and film, right? So so this, I always have some kind of a visually appealing title slide. This becomes a thumbnail later on. And you've got layers here. So there's actually an image in the background here. You can see here, let me see if I can grab that. This image in the background here, it's actually not attached, but it is behind everything, right? Once you have that where you want it, highly recommend that you lock it into place so that it can't be moved. And then of course you can make modifications to what's on top. This would be a list slide here. Again, these are things that just stay put on all of them. You'll find them throughout, right? They don't move. And I wanted to get down here and actually show you guys how this this slide was created, right? So if you're making a sales presentation and you're maybe making a point that is eliciting some kind of emotion or asking someone to engage with a concept that might have an emotional trigger, it's really helpful to have some kind of image in the background that is conducive to the point that you're making. And so what I did here was I created an image in Canva, and you can see actually this is just on top of an existing slide with GetOiling branding on it, just like all of the others. And I actually created this in Canva. Let me go over to Canva actually and show you guys what I did to create that image, because you may choose to create some like this as well. Let me change my share here real quick. Here we go. So what I did is I created a presentation. So I looked over here, I typed in presentation, and it's this one right here, 16 by 9. That's also 1920 by 1080 pixels. This is, just so you know, the optimal resolution size for an image that you're going to use as a background in your slides, for a thumbnail on YouTube, for a thumbnail on one of your videos in a Tractwell. That's the resolution size that you want. So you can just go ahead and create a presentation. And I went over, and here, I'll just go ahead and create a new slide and show you. I went over to elements and I typed in rain. I saw this one with umbrellas, but there's certainly more you could do. You can continue scrolling. Maybe we're talking about hope on the other side of a dark time, right? So here I'm going to, this is a 2-finger click on a trackpad, or you could right click with a mouse. We can set this image as background. We can double click it if we want to adjust it up or down. And then once we're done, we're going to share it. And in this case, that's going to go down to downloads here. I'm going to download it as a JPEG or a PNG. Either way, up to you. And I'm going to download it. Now it might, here we go. No, this one's fine. This one isn't. So on the premium images, they do give you sort of a, hey, we don't want you to download this big premium image unless there's text on it or there's some other stuff on it. So what I did in this case is I put an itty bitty amount of text right here in the middle that is going to be underneath what I'm actually going to be putting onto the screen. So that's a sort of a nice little workaround here. So here we go. I've downloaded this. Let's go back over to the presentation and I'll show you exactly how I set that slide up. All right, so I'm going to use one of my impact slides here, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to go find my image. That's in my downloads. Here we go. I'm just going to drag it over. And you see it's big enough to fit up the whole screen. I'm going to double click or sorry, 2-finger click on a trackpad or right click on a mouse. I'm going to look for the placement option, right? So regardless of what you're using, it could be Canva, it could be PowerPoint, you're going to have an option for layers. We want to send it to the back, right? And notice here that this old logo that I have, it's not transparent. It's not going to work here. I need to use a different version, which I've actually already done in this slide. So I'm going to paste that here. We can't see it though, right? So maybe I need to go find another version of this logo that is white, or maybe I just forego it. But in this case, I can change the color of this text, right, to white, which is what I did in that other example. And this is another reason why I highly recommend having different versions of your logos. So, this one is with the black text. It would be beneficial for us to have one with the white text as well, which we might actually, do we have that up here? Well, we have the drop, so no, not readily available. Anyway, we have one somewhere, and that's what I would do in this case. So the next thing we want to address is the fact that this is kind of hard to read. So we might choose to just turn this text white and see how it looks. And this actually works. This can work. I think that it will pop a little bit more if we add a shape to go behind it. So in this case, I'm going to click shape. It's going to give me a square to start. I'm not going to worry about its positioning yet and the fact that it's overlapping my text. I'll do something about that in a moment. I'm going to drag it off to the sides. Make sure that it fully covers the text so that it shows up as a background. And then I'm going to, again, 2-finger click on a trackpad or right click on a mouse. I'm going to send it to the back. Oops, that's too far back. Let's send that image to the back. Oh, sorry, oops, the background image to the back. There we go. And maybe we might adjust the opacity of this. I'm going to select this. I'm going to try anyway to select our shape that we just created. There we go. So I've selected the shape. You can see with the little dots there, it's selected. Maybe I want to change the opacity of this. I'm going to go to style and I'm going to just make it a little bit less opaque, right? So it just looks a little nicer. You can play around with that. Again, highly recommend if you are going to use elements like these that you use the ones that are in your brand palette. If you are using Keynote like this, you can actually take your colors that you're using and drag them over so that they're there for you to use again. So I could even, in this case, not following my own advice here, I could also make sure that maybe those colors that I'm using are more in keeping with our brand colors, right? So that is how that would be created here. And I'm not sure, I might need to, let me clean up my desktop here real quick, and I can actually show you guys two things. One is going to be the settings for Keynote itself, so I can actually show you how I made this modification. And the other is the actual outline that I created before we got started. So let me just go ahead and expand the size of our Keynote here, and I will show you guys how I made those changes. And again, if you have questions, feel free, please do put those into the Q&A, and I will get right to you. All right, here we go. I'm going to share, in this case, I'm going to go share my full desktop because now I want you to be able to see. Hang on just a second. I want you to be able to see the options that I chose here. So when I go to actually start the presentation, I'm pressing this play button right here. But what I can do here is under play, I can choose what my presenter display is. And there are settings that are similar to this in PowerPoint. And so what we're looking for here is whether or not, we're showing things like our presenter notes, right? If that's something that you're using and you're putting those onto your slides. If you are using that presenter display and it's customized, then when it's time for you to actually show your presentation, you hit play and it's going to produce two different screens for you. You can see that this larger one here is the actual slide deck. Our notes would be over here and it shows us what our upcoming slide is. And then we can click through, and what your viewers will see in the video or live in Zoom is just your presentation, and you'll still be able to see what's coming next and what your notes are if you have any there. All right, and then the other thing I wanted to show you is I practice what I preach, and I outline at least 90% of what I plan to put into a presentation. So just make sure that you are doing this. It will make your life a lot easier. It'll be more streamlined in how you create what it is that you create in your videos. So make sure that content is outlined so that you don't forget anything and you don't potentially go a little too long in what you're talking about, because you do want to be mindful of people's time. All right, so let me get back over here to our comments and our Q&A before we get going today. Really appreciate the time that you guys have put into learning today. Let let me see. I think that's it. Oh, you like that mini text trick? Yeah, there's always a workaround. Um, I am the outline queen, yes. And it's because, and I mean, everybody's brain is a little different, right? And I fully recognize that I am a creative brain that wants to do all the things all the time. And I also recognize that if I don't address the fact that my brain wants to do all the things, then I don't do anything. Right? Anybody ever experienced that? So you just keep, I feel like I'm like I worked on this, one of those like what 10,000 hours, expertise you build when working on yourself kind of things. I've got like a best friend who struggles with this, and I'm always trying to help her with it. And it's always the same stuff, like outline it, make a list, make a list, make a list, make a list, make a list. Because that way you're appeasing the part of your brain that wants to dump everything out, and you're providing yourself with fodder for organization, right? I'm not naturally inclined toward organization. I have to force myself to do it. And this is one of those habits that if you're creative minded, this will save you if you need to make content for the work that you do. It also, I think, helps to make sure that you're succinct. And this is really important if you are creating a presentation. The point of creating a presentation is not for you to say, look at everything I know, right? The point of your presentation is to help someone do something, right? And that's something that's in their best interest, right? So that's learning something that will be powerful for them to employ in their life now or at some point in the future, buying something that will make their life better, right? Or learning more about the person that they should be listening to, which is you, right? It's kind of moving in the kind of wonky order based on those use cases. But in any of those cases, we want to make sure that we are staying on top of what we promised at the outset. And then, of course, making sure that whatever it is that we're talking about remains relevant to that person so that they will stick around the whole time and get that call to action at the end and actually do something with it, right? So that is really the reason why outlines are so important here, because you can't really fulfill a promise effectively unless you are super well versed and going into something, having your own, I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z, and my call to action is going to be this. You can keep that all in your head and you can keep it succinct. You have to be somebody who does this regularly, such as myself. And even I find that I'm more effective when I create these outlines. You could ask me, and well, we have another call coming up at 2, but you could ask me, to come up with another call today to speak on a topic covering these points for an hour later this afternoon. And I would be cool with it, right? If it was a topic that I knew about, because I do this all the time. If you don't do this all the time, you can't go seat of your pants. You're not going to create the impactful content that you want. And certainly it's not going to be created in such a way that you are intentionally creating the outcome from it, that you're setting out for, achieving the objective, right? So if you're going to do the work, make sure that the work that you're doing achieves the objective that you are putting that labor out there for. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sticking around today. I hope this is really helpful to you. And I really hope that you get out there and start creating content for yourself. If you are not looking to create content, or if the objective of creating your own content is one that doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? So again, if you just want to generally educate on Ningxia, I highly recommend grabbing something that someone else made. Go to the content partners page on our website, just click the content tab on our website, and you can find Grow Workspace in particular has incredible slide presentations that are made for classes. Now, these are more general to different interests and to different products. And they're not necessarily going to be catered specifically to your ideal person, but they're editable, right? So definitely check those out. Yes, Sarah Harnish has some amazing stuff out there too. Look, if it is something that is for your customers, like for people who are already bought into Young Living, you will be better served pointing to another person talking about whatever it is, especially if you are kind of making the formal Young Living presentation. If you are wanting to really reach and teach your ideal people, right? If you guys are Martha folks, your bat signal people, the people that you really feel driven in your heart to serve. Sometimes you do want to create some additional context, or if you have passions, you have specific ways that you use oils. this is going to be a great reason to do this. And of course, welcoming folks to your team, or if you are someone who really likes to teach classes, this is going to be great for you as well, right? So you guys get out there and do it. Let us know how it's going for you in our Facebook group. Make sure you're a part of that if you aren't already. And we will be back here same time next week. Hope you guys have a great week, everyone.